Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are actor Eric Etebari and author, animator Darell Rooney. Animator, author Darell Rooney was born and raised in Ontario, Canada. He graduated with honors from Sheridan College of Applied Arts and Technology. And one of the things, Darell, you always wanted to go to Disney. How did this happen from Listburger to LA?
That was actually the really easy part. Listburger Studios was a studio in Boston owned by a man named Steve Listburger, and he had come up with an idea for a TV special called Animalympics. The 1980 Olympics were going to be held in the United States, so he sold this project to NBC. And that was a big boost up for his studio, so that meant let's move to Los Angeles and become players in the Los Angeles scene. So they knew that they were moving to Los Angeles. When I first heard about positions there, they suddenly needed a whole bunch of new animators. And I was just graduating from Sheridan. I'd always planned to live in Los Angeles when I grew up.
So Listburger came to California, and all of a sudden you were working for Disney. How did that happen?
Yeah, it wasn't quite that smooth. What happened was Animalympics was planned to be an independent production by Listburger Studios. And and it did go through. And Steve's next project was this very futuristic idea called Tron.
Ah, yes.
About being inside a computer. And, it was an extraordinary idea.
That was Steve's idea?
Steve Listburger is a visionary.
Ah.
And it was just really on the cutting edge. And the plan was that the profits for Animalympics would fund the making of Tron.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing happened with the 1980 Olympics, and they got boycotted. So all the revenue that was planned for Animalympics never came to be. So instead, Steve started shopping Tron around studios, and ultimately Disney bought it.
I see.
So it became a Disney film, and we all followed Steve to Disney. And all of a sudden, here I was working at Walt Disney Productions, and my childhood dream came true.
Right from Canada to Boston to LA to Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. You were in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
And at Disney, you did Lion King and Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah, I actually worked at Disney a couple of times. I'd worked there for a couple of years, and then I would leave and go do something somewhere else, and then I'd come back for something else. And I spent like 10 or 15 years learning all the different aspects of animation.
At their studio? At the Disney studio, or going out and coming back?
Going out, coming back. And in the mid-90s, in the late 80s, I reached the point where I felt like, okay, I'm ready to direct. Now I just need to convince someone else.
Oh, and what happened?
So it took a couple of years.
Then you moved to Sony.
No, that came afterwards.
Oh, that came afterwards.
No, what happened was I was working at Turner Features Animation, and I had pitched a project there as a director, and they were humming and hawing, and then a friend of mine called me at Disney and said, I'm working at Disney TV Animation, and they're doing sequels to their animated features, and they're looking for directors.
Oh, that's what you were looking for. There you were.
So they actually had a program to do these short films that were supposed to be sort of like fractured fairy tales. And so I went in and interviewed about an animated short film on the Three Little Pigs that would be a modern retelling of the Three Little Pigs. And the interview was great. We actually didn't even talk about animation. We just sort of connected as people. and they offered me the job, so I left and went straight to Disney TV animation. And from there I went on to co-direct Lion King 2. And one of my best friends, Roger Allers, had directed the original Lion King. So I knew that he was very touchy about a sequel being done. So I actually went and talked to him about it.
I wondered about that, and that was good that you had that
so he
camaraderie.
Said, yes, absolutely. And so he was sort of my point person to go to if I ever had a conflict. So I felt like it was a really fresh story. It was really talking about the shadow side of Simba's story.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that that was something really worthwhile to tell.
Well, I've got to get you to Sony.
Yes.
So how do we get to Sony then?
Well, okay, so in a sentence, I stayed at Disney and I directed 3 sequels, and I felt like I was the sequel king.
Yeah,
thought,
but that's good too,
it's good, it's good, but I never intended to be the sequel king, and they were getting to the point where they were doing sequel number 4, number 5.
You could have been there forever.
Boy, I want to do more than this. So I ended up leaving, and I went over to Sony Pictures Animation eventually to develop some projects, and at the same time, a photographer friend of mine, Mark Vieira, who also is a writer, and he's written 11 books on old Hollywood history, we started talking about the possibility of doing a book on Jean Harlow together.
Oh, so that's how it came about. Was he at Sony too?
No.
Oh, he wasn't?
No, he's not in animation at all. He's not in the film business at all.
But what was so great about the Sony lot that you were...
Oh, well, the thing about the Sony lot, for me, is the main lot at Sony is the old MGM lot,
right,
which is where Jean Harlow had the flowering of her career.
And that's why we have you here,
that's
Harlow in Hollywood.
And, you know, Jean Harlow is somebody who lived 70 years ago. It's a long time ago. But there are things that are left behind. You know, objects that we have and held are things that survive us. Homes that we lived in survive. Right. The lot where she worked still survives. So those are touchstones. So
there you were on the lot, and Mark was interested in her.
To the lot.
And Mark Vieira was interested in her as well.
Yeah.
And how did you decide to do the project?
Well, he had done a couple of other books and used me for reference. And he discovered I had a ton of photographs. I'd been collecting photographs of Jean Harlow for decades. And I'd been doing a lot of research so I could answer questions that he didn't know the answers to. And so over the years, we sort of developed this working relationship without it being a working relationship. I certainly have done my fair share of screenwriting as a director, and Mark has also been moving into screenwriting. And so I started reading his screenplays, giving him notes, and he really liked my notes. So we sort of developed the shorthand, and he'd done a series of books. The last 2 he'd done were both on Thalberg. And, you know, he's just a really smart writer. And, you know, he started talking about, you know, I would love to do a book on Jean Harlow, and I think you're the guy to do it with. And just looking at the photographs that you have, I think there's a whole book here.
Well, you're both authors of this book by Angel City Press.
Angel City Press, yes.
And how'd you divide the work?
You know, the thing was, because we had already sort of worked out a relationship, and I think that we both know what our strengths are, it was pretty open and pretty easy. So in terms of the writing, I would do the first draft of every chapter, and then it would go to Mark. And because Mark has written so many books on old Hollywood history, his breadth of knowledge, you know, far exceeds mine. So he'd take what I wrote, put it in a context that I couldn't possibly put it in. Then it would come back to me, and I would give notes, would go back to him, and then we'd go back.
So you weren't in competition in any way. You were helping each other get this book done.
It was, yeah, you know, it was a fascinating process. And also, you know, we didn't get a publisher till the 11th hour.
Oh, that was the other thing that was interesting. You worked all that time.
Oh, my God.
How long were you working on it?
Well, I think that we started talking about this project in the early 1990s.
Oh, so you worked on it a long time.
And so I was gearing towards this, and at first it was, it's going to be a screenplay. You know what? David Sten, who wrote the definitive biography on Jean Harlow in the 1990s, had a screenplay that he couldn't sell in the 1990s, and it was like, well, if he can't sell it, I can't, so I'm going to swap and I'm going to do a book, because I think that the modern generation doesn't really know who Jean Harlow is.
What you said that we're talking about 100 years. How did you find people who knew her? They had to be old too. I mean, the
yes.
houses survived, the photos survived, the costumes, the clothes
Some of them
survived,
survive, yeah.
But people to interview.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing because they're mostly all gone. So there are a couple of people that are still around, and I interviewed them, but the bulk of the interviews I actually acquired from someone else who had interviewed people back in the 1980s.
Ah.
And this was the most astounding thing.
How lucky.
It's a young man named Dennis Lee Cleven, and he wanted to do a book on Jean Harlow, and so he lived in the Midwest, so he decided to interview all these people in the Midwest who grew up with her, went to high school with her at Ferry Hall.
Fabulous.
And nobody had ever spoken to these people, and they were all still young enough that they were pretty vibrant and could look back on those years with a certain amount of understanding.
We're talking about her because she's a legend.
Yeah.
Who did the cover of this photo?
This photograph is taken by George Harrell, who's the number one
Who
glamour
did the cover of this
photographer.
photo? Who
Yes.
did the cover of this book?
That is our art director. Her name is Hillary Lentini. She lives in Los Angeles here.
She's great, huh?
She's fantastic. And, usually with these kinds of books, it's usually a big glamour portrait. And so she showed us a bunch like that, and they all happen to be my favorite pictures. So I went, I'm good with any of them.
But George Harrell is a legend also.
Absolutely.
So he would be the perfect person on here. We
Yeah.
do talk about all these legends, and this woman died at 26 years old.
Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah, so how did she become such a big legend, and would she have attained stardom if she'd gone on?
Well, she attained stardom, when she was 19 years old.
Yeah, but
which
would
is
she have kept it?
crazy.
Would she have kept it?
I think so. She was someone who initially was a spectacular-looking blonde, and she photographed exceptionally well. And once she got to MGM, they developed a persona for her that really mirrored how she looked, or juxtaposed it in a way that made her very engaging. And as the years went by, her persona changed, and more of the warmth of her personality emerged. So she became a comedian who was very warm. And so MGM, by 1937, she was a completely different kind of star. And in January of 1937, she was actually invited to Washington to the president's birthday ball, which is something probably that would never have happened in 1933, which is considered just a sex symbol.
Right. She had some stature to her.
Yeah.
Well, we can't wait to finish reading it. I started reading it, but it takes it. You want to savor every
Yes.
word.
Yeah.
And as you said, Mark wrote great words, and you had great pictures. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Joan.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with Eric Etebari. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with actor Eric Etebari, a native Angelino, award-winning athlete at Santa Monica High School, and a scholarship recipient to the UC system. No, not
San
UCC.
Diego State.
San Diego
Didn't quite make the UC system. I tried, but
But is San Diego State the Catholic school?
no. It's like
Which one's-
USD, University of San Diego.
There's 3 of them down there, isn't
Yeah,
there?
USD, University of San Diego, and SDSU.
Okay, so where were you?
I was at SDSU
And you got a scholarship for doing what?
playing volleyball
Oh, okay, got it.
and drinking beer and partying late and all the other things that go great at San Diego State.
do they do that at all the other San Diego schools?
No, I think just San Diego State.
Only yours. You picked the right one.
dude.
And aren't you too tall to play volleyball?
No, actually, that's the sport for tall guys.
Is it really?
Yeah, I'm actually small now. Guys are like 6'6", 6'9". I'm only 6'2", so.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I thought it was for like short people who love to jump up tall and hit the ball over.
No, it's a tall man's sport, tall woman's sport, yeah.
And how did you keep in shape for that?
By default, coach is running your butt off all day long. You know,
Drinking beer.
practice, yeah, running to the bar.
Actually, that's what they think of volleyball players. I mean, I don't think
Casual,
they think,
beach, drink, flip flops.
but they don't think volleyball players are like these super athletes, but they
Yeah.
are. Did you do the triathlon?
I do the Malibu triathlon every year. Yeah.
And how do you prepare for that?
I mean, I'm pretty active. I play a lot of basketball during the week. I run during the week. I just stay active. I think it's I never really particularly train for anything in particular. I just stay active as
Do you
possible.
eat a certain kind of food? Do you have a regime?
I eat everything, and I eat way too much sugar. That's for sure.
So that keeps you running fast?
That keeps me moving.
So you don't have any tips for keeping in shape to play volleyball?
Well, I think the best way to keep in shape is be consistent, right? You just got to make sure you do something consistent. You know.
And do it.
Yeah, and do it, and make it part of your routine, and make it a lifestyle, and that usually helps.
One of the things that was great about your being at San Diego was that not only did you get an athletic award and all this praise for your achievements in athletics, but you got a Spirit of Courage Award in 1991, which was very inspirational, I think, probably for the whole campus. What was that?
I was like a junior, I think, or a sophomore, and basically the condo below where I was living caught on fire at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I heard all this screaming, and first I thought it was like a domestic argument. I didn't really want to mess with it or get involved.
Really?
And then finally, you could just kind of hear in the voices. It was just got a little scary. So I ran downstairs, and all of a sudden I saw all these smoke coming out the door, and I kicked open the door. Flames came flying out. I ran to the back door, and there was this little old guy trying to kick the door open. So together we kicked open the door. Same stuff. Flames came out, but we could still hear a couple people crying. He went down on his hands and knees, and I just ran in, kind of eyes open, breathing, standing up. I forgot all the
Not even
basics.
thinking,
Yeah, you're
right.
supposed to get low, hide. I lasted like 2 seconds. There was a girl at the door passed out. We pulled her out.
Really?
And then I just kind of had this instinct. I ran back in. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and I kind of moved throughout the room. And I knew it was the same model of mine because I lived upstairs.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I don't know, as I was kind of walking through blind, like with my eyes closed, I bumped into a body on the ground, and I remember just grabbing her viciously and just yanking her out of there with, and 2 girls, we pulled 2 out of the 3 girls, the original girl who actually started the fire, who was on the couch smoking.
They say that's so true that's how those fires start, and I guess it is.
Yeah.
Well, did you take acting while you were there?
I didn't. I took one acting class in high school, and I took a course in college, but then I always thought, I'm going to be a professional volleyball player, football player or something, so I put it aside.
Oh, you did? Oh, you
Yeah.
thought you were going to go into professional.
Yeah, I thought I'd be a professional athlete. It wasn't until college, towards the end of college, I started doing some modeling, and that led to commercial work, which ended up eventually getting into a great acting class.
But how did you start with your modeling? Just by being an athlete? They wanted somebody who
That
came
was
to
funny.
you?
I was in San Diego, and there was this magazine called International Mail. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. It's
For good-looking guys.
yeah, International Mail. It was like this thing in the paper that said, they're doing this open casting, and my roommate's like, "Oh, Etebari, you need to go. You need to go.
Oh,
You'll
is
be
that
great.
right?
You'll be great." So they motivated me to go, and they were like, "Oh, we'll go with you," and they're all pumped in the car. "Yo, Eric, you're gonna be great. You're gonna be perfect." We get there's like 500 guys. They're like, "Good luck, Eric. We're dropping you off. We'll see you
Bye."
later." I mean, and there's a good-looking guy of every nationality you can think of, right?
All the way
It's
around the
all the way
globe.
around, right? All of a sudden you think you're special, then you realize you're like one of 1,000.
Oh, that's so great. It's so shockingly true, though, isn't it?
It is true. It is true. Like, oh my God, look at, it's like when you audition for, when you go as an
Acting, you're an
actor.
actor now, so it's the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
it is the same thing. You get all prepared. You're ready to go. I am this guy. I'm the role. And then you walk in the room and there's 10 other guys that look just like you. Like, oh.
And it's so true, isn't it? When you go to audition, they're all the same because they're looking for a type,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I usually try to come up with like a creative choice to make or give an interpretation I feel like my competitors won't come up with.
Yeah, I wonder how you do that because do you know the guys who work out, who go to audition? The same guys must be there.
Yeah, you start to see them, but the older you get, the more they start to, fade off.
Are they dropping off?
They're dropping off. All my friends have dropped off. They either get married, have children, start a family, get into a business that has a little more security, or they just get burnt going to different, avenues.
Yeah, rejection.
It's tough.
Did you have rejection in athletics?
Not really. It seems like in sports you can work hard and get the result.
And if you're in a group, you also have that team spirit.
With acting, no matter how hard you work, if someone doesn't give you the shot to show what you're capable of doing, no one's going to know. In sports, you constantly, through practice, through games, you have an opportunity to show your skill level.
And directing. Did you take any directing workshops?
I directed this movie called Bare Knuckles, and that was kind of by default. I couldn't find a director or a producer that felt that we could shoot it for the budget and the amount of days that we shot it in.
Oh, is that right?
And my mom kept saying, "You have the vision, you see it so clearly, why don't you direct it?" So I ended up taking myself out of the lead in which I thought I was going to, put myself in to kind of launch my career, and I ended up directing it, and I had the best time.
And you cast it too?
Casted it. I had some help on, producing help, casting help, but pretty much did a little bit of everything, from the paperwork to the distribution deals to the SAG deals to, everything.
Oh, so you had to learn the business, so you became a producer.
Exactly.
And then you became a director.
Then I became a director, and now I'm back to acting after the directing.
Well, what about the writing part?
I tend to just write more when it's projects that I'm in control of or have a lot of influence on. At certain budgets, you have to rewrite stuff.
So you know how to do that?
Yeah.
You know how to do that?
Write my own projects. I'm always developing stuff.
You're in this also TV world where you've worked a lot with in American Heroes and CSI and done these recurring roles. And do you like doing that?
I like TV. I like the recurring stuff, the series regular, the idea of being on a show for the same show for 5 years, saying the same thing.
Just saying the same thing?
Yeah, I don't know. But, to go out and do movies and go to different locations, take on different roles and different challenges seems to really kind of ignite me. And there's a little more creativity, I think, in movies. You have a little more range to explore a character versus television. There's a formula, and you got to go in and do it.
We talked about your casting. You had to do the music probably, or when you were directing. You had to do the music. How do you find the music, and what's the vision for something like that?
That was new for me, but I really like music. I have a little band.
Oh, you do?
Knuckles and the Knockouts.
And that was the name of your movie?
No, my movie is called Bare Knuckles. Everything's related to the knuckle.
What? Something's happening here.
No, I worked with this guy, Evan, who has a company called Woodwork Sound, and during the movie, if I had a musical idea, he was so talented, he could pick up an instrument and kind of get the gist of it, and we would build on it together, and he was really gracious in letting me kind of work with him through the music so I could explore and express my ideas.
So did you use your band?
I didn't use it. I couldn't get it in the movie. But,
is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, you couldn't get it in.
It didn't quite seem appropriate.
I see.
Yeah.
So this hero part continues. The fake hero now in films from your real hero stuff in San Diego. Hollywood, Grove, foster home. I think that's really hero stuff, to be involved in foster homes and helping kids.
Well, as a kid, I grew up right there on Santa Monica and Vine Street Elementary School is right across the street from Holly Grove.
Oh, is that where it is?
Which is for abused orphan children. So as a kid, like a lot of my friends, they would let those kids go to school there. So I became friends with them, and I always felt like, wow, if I ever had to give back to the community, to me, that's really giving back to the community. Those are the kids that need it. They're the kids I grew up with, and you're constantly people are constantly hitting you up for this or that and that. And I just try to be real specific on where I devote my attention.
And that's still there, and you still go and give your time. The other thing that I thought was really fabulous and heroic, I think, is working for Good Shepherd Shelter, and that's for abused women.
For homeless women and children.
Oh, well, both,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They're
yeah.
pretty abused at that time. And what do you give in that kind of
Well,
situation?
in that situation, it was interesting. A girlfriend of mine was on the board of directors for Good Shepherd, and she was the same friend that helped sell my movie Bare Knuckles, or helped me get distribution. So when they were in their board meeting, and they came up with like, oh, we need a new video for Good Shepherd this year, she's like, I got the guy. And so she called me up. She's like, hey, I've got this project. You know, they got no budget really. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh, I love it. I mean, if I can give back and give back not just in a monetary sense, but like what I value most, my creative ideas and my passion, to me that's far greater than finance. So I'm putting together this little 9-minute video for Good Shepherd.
And that takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and you have to draw on your friends, right, to help you?
I got everybody working on it.
All your friends are doing it. The Lincoln Lawyer, you have a role in. We're going to like really quickly do
Greatest
these.
time, the Lincoln Lawyer with Matthew McConaughey. I play a guy named Charles Talbot who gets accused of a crime that they are trying to pin on Ryan Felipe.
Oh, yeah.
It was the greatest time I ever had. Matthew McConaughey was great. Josh Lucas is in it, John Leguizamo.
And also, at the same time, you're doing this affirmative action type film.
And
or you
Affirmative
did.
Act, yeah. I'm actually, it's a great little movie. It's on the legalization of gay marriage. This guy named Kenneth Del Vecchio, he's like this prolific. He's been a judge, he's a writer, he's written a book, he's a lawyer, now he's been producing these movies, and he's really grown. I mean, this movie is, you know, I think it's a good little movie, but what I appreciate about it most is that here's a filmmaker who can put out any kind of content, but he's actually attempting to put out something that has real substance, has a meaning, has a message, that's current, is an issue.
I can see this in your whole persona, and it was so nice to meet you. Thank you
Nice
very
to meet
much,
you.
Eric. Thanks.
Pleasure.
And keep writing. Email me at jaquinn1@aol.com. We'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.